Hey guys, this is Dana, and this is episode number 41 of the Ask a Question Show, the show in which you ask a question about any type of narcissistic or otherwise abusive or toxic relationship or situation, and I, along with the rest of the community here, will do our very best to help answer it. Our goal is to give you the feedback and the support that you need so that you can move forward in getting all of the clarity, the closure, and the healing possible. So today's question comes from Anonymous, and Anonymous asks, Dear Dana, how do I avoid making friends with a narcissist? I seem to have a lot of them in my life. So, fantastic question. You are not alone in that. I think this is a pretty freaky realization that a lot of us have come to. We start learning about these terms like narcissist or borderline or sociopath or psychopath or antisocial or histrionic, and we start examining all of the different significant relationships we've had in our life, whether it's with our parents or friends or, ex-boyfriends or girlfriends or husbands or wives or what have you, and realizing, whoa, like time out, what's going on? How is it possible? How is it even like statistically possible that I have this many crazy people in my life? And there's several points. There's about 5 points and all that I really want to touch on about this. So the first one has to do with awareness and deal breaker behavior. So a lot of us simply operate from this mindset that it's a term called a just world perspective, basically that we think the world is fair and just, and if we act in a way that's fair and just, that other people will too. And so that's not the case. And highly manipulative people really capitalize on us thinking that. And so this is there's so many different reasons as to why it's so hard to spot these people or to get away from them. But in large part is a lot of them are the wolves in sheep's clothing. They keep saying whatever they need to say in order to get us to believe that they really will change, that this is the last time it'll happen. But they never ever seem to really fully change for good, or if they do change, it's definitely not enough change in order for it to be a healthy situation for us. So that's the first point. And the second part of that is the deal breaker behavior. So again, a lot of us have these ideas, which I call thought holes, which I'll get to in a second here. But this idea of everything is workable, that we should just, as long as a person is giving us some sort of hope that things will be different, that we should just stay. And we don't want to give up on them. But this is, very dangerous thinking, and it keeps a lot of people stuck in really disempowering or abusive relationships for a really long time. So the second point is in the realization that every single thing that we do we're doing it because it benefits us in some sort of way. And so I think it's helpful to think of all of our behavior this way. So everything that we do is designed to get us away from pain and into pleasure, really. So if things are kind of getting tangled there and we're like, well, but this relationship or this addiction or kind of whatever you're having that's really seemingly like maladaptive, that's causing you a lot of pain, it still is serving a purpose. So somewhere along the line, kind of wires have gotten crossed, and you're confusing the whole pain with pleasure, but you're still getting something out of it. So I think a great way to examine what you might possibly be getting out of it is to look at a term, again, I'll link down to this below here, but that I did a video on called empty buckets. And this was an amazing concept that somebody had brought up in the support group a while back. And basically what it is the idea that we all have two empty buckets that we're carrying around. And these empty buckets come from childhood. And it's basically two things that we feel that we didn't get from our parents emotionally. So either real or perceived. And, again, there's no judgment here. That's not saying that we're blaming our parents for anything, but it's just, again, real or perceived. And again, children interpret things through their child's mind. And so that's why I'm saying it's important to not place judgment on this and to just think like, I wonder where that thought came from and I wonder why. So, for example, I think there's a lot of us out there, myself included, that have the two empty buckets of feeling maybe ignored or unloved as children, for whatever reason. So as adults, we're constantly trying to fill those buckets. Well, this can make us, and I think too, it's important to note that these buckets, in my opinion, are some of our biggest vulnerabilities. And so here's kind of another place where I think a lot of people go off track, especially when it comes to romantic relationships with these people, is they tend to think, well, They exploit our vulnerabilities, and then but they're only thinking this. I was like this too, thinking, well, vulnerabilities in terms of maybe you're recently divorced, maybe you don't have any money, maybe you have a lot of money, maybe kind of what else is going on. But I really, and that can all very well be true, but I think what really drives those other potential vulnerabilities has to do with these two empty buckets. And because the reality is too with vulnerabilities is because we're all human, we're always going to have vulnerabilities throughout our whole life, and that's okay. We can't get rid of them all. I don't even know if we would really want to, because it's just part of the human experience. So, but it's the empty buckets that really drive that. So this can make us really susceptible to certain things. So, for example, if a person's carrying around the empty buckets of feeling ignored and unloved, that's probably going to make them very susceptible to the love bombing and to the rushing of intimacy. And so, because it's making them feel very important and loved and acknowledged. And so they're going to cling to that. And of course, manipulative people, they move fast, they lay it on thick. And then it's really hard for victims or targets of these people to get away from that. And it's not that it's not that they're in love with this person necessarily. It's more of they're trying to get their buckets filled, and they're wanting this relationship. They don't want this relationship to end, because then it again kind of causes them pain. It reinforces the whole feeling of ignored and unloved, which they're trying to avoid. But do you see how that as a self-defeating cycle? It's really tricky. But the cool thing is, once you do realize what your empty buckets are, then you can start filling them in yourself, and you can start filling them in more, healthy, empowering ways. So you might, if you're feeling ignored, you could start having dinner parties at your house. You could start making a huge effort to be a better friend to people. Same with feeling unloved. You can start showing others love, and they'll in turn give it back to you. Or just doing loving things with animals, or kind of however you feel that fits best in your life. So the third point as to why I think a lot of us have friends with narcissists or relationships is a term that I call thought holes. And this is a fairly new term. I'll link down to a video I just did about this yesterday. And so basically, there's four main thought holes that I believe that we all fall into. I'll go through them here really quickly. But the first one is, well, who am I to judge? Well, second one is, well, no one's perfect. The third one is, well, we need to treat others like we want to be treated. And then the fourth one is, it's important that we forgive and forget. And so all of these things are somewhat true, but only within the certain context, like appropriate context. If these thoughts are not within the context, then they become thought holes, and they can really and the whole concept of a thought hole is to our thoughts as a pothole is to our vehicle. So if we hit one, and it can really derail us, it can rattle us, or it can totally derail us. Next thing we know, we were off in like this ditch that is our life. And so again, some of the context might be, well, who are you to judge? And these are things that we tell ourselves, and we also often tell other people. And again, it's kind of well-intentioned advice, but it really keeps people stuck. So who are you to judge, right? Well, the reality is that you are the one that's responsible for your life. So it's very important that you use some sort of degree of judgment, whether I prefer to call it more of like discernment, but that you can tell kind of what's healthy and what's not healthy for you. So the second one is, who are you to judge? No one is perfect. Well, okay, that's true. However, within the context is, but that does not make abuse or disempowering behavior of any kind okay. So the third one is, well, we need to treat other people like we want to be treated. Well, this is true, but again, all of these things can keep us really stuck if we're dealing with disempowering or manipulative people, I should say. So when we treat others like we want to be treated, if we want to be treated with compassion and understanding and kindness and dignity and these good things, then it's good that we treat other people the same way. This is true. However, if a person is their behavior is trying to disempower us, we also need to realize that we want and need to be treated in an empowering way. We need to treat ourselves like that, and then ideally other people. But it would be disempowering to us if we're trying to continually empower a very disempowering person. So these things have to be in alignment in order for it to be a win-win situation. If this relationship of any kind is disempowering, or enabling, then something needs to give. And if we can't make it to be where it's empowering for us and for the other person, if it's a win-win, then we either need to distance ourselves or get out of there completely, because it's not healthy. So the last one is the whole forgive and forget. This is true, but only within the context. And the context is forgiveness is only possible if a person is truly, sincerely remorseful for their behavior and they're taking massive, consistent action to repair the relationship. If those two things are not there, then it's not empowering and it's not compassionate, or treating ourselves with dignity by letting this person to stay in our lives. And then again, I cover that a lot more of that in the video below, which I highly recommend you watch. So the fourth and last point to this is examining our boundaries. And a really kind of shortcut way to figure out what our boundaries are is to really pay attention to our thoughts. And I call this concept following our peace. This is why I have this little dove up here. And so the concept behind following our peace is examining how you're feeling about different things on a regular basis. So if you're feeling, because that's a sign of where our boundaries are with something, and if a boundary's been crossed. So if you're feeling frustrated, anxious, depressed, upset, irritated, any kind of negative emotion about something that's going on in your life of any kind, then you've crossed a boundary with yourself. And so it's wise to take a step back and think, well, what boundary, kind of what's not working here? Is this, and boundaries let us know what's empowering for us and for what's empowering for other people, and kind of making that work. So again, examining that, where, how do you need to change your approach? What needs to be different? And you might find that it might be very small, subtle things that you need to do in order to make a situation more empowering. So that's kind of what I have for you. I hope that helps. I will be really curious to see what everybody else has to say. And as always, if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, frustrations, feedback, ideas, insight, you need some support, you just want to say hi, the best place to get a hold of me and many other people is the support group, which again, contact info will be in the description area. And as always, lots of love to you guys. You're not alone. You are not crazy, and you really can move forward and heal from this. So take care, and I will talk to you soon. Okay, bye.